I was wondering if I should speak, and then the music will stop. Or Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for Digilogue for the invitation. Our topic today is crafts in a digital era, why and how. Together with me, it's going to be Melissa Tapan, the founder of Gate27, and also Bilal Yilmaz, an artist based here in Istanbul. I'm Lydia Hadjiakovou, and thank you for pronouncing the name quite right. I know it's difficult. We will start by introducing ourselves, and then we will have a two-part discussion between myself and Melissa and Bilal. The first part is going to be about frameworks and definitions of what we do, and then about the practices, what we actually do with within these frameworks. I know it's not very polite, but I will start to talk about myself first, just for practical reasons. So I'm a curator based in Thessaloniki and lately in Istanbul also. I studied art history and archaeology at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki and then cultural management in London. And since 2004, I have been working with Artbox, a creative arts management agency based in Thessaloniki and working internationally. What we do at Artbox is, for the first 10 years almost of the company, agency, I don't know how to call it, it's just two people, me and my business partner. For the first 10 years of the company, we have been dealing mostly with exhibition making, more like typical contemporary art exhibitions and projects, art fairs, festivals, this kind of thing. But almost from since 2010, when the financial crisis started in Greece, we also started reconsidering what we do, and we started shifting our focus from contemporary art in the most traditional sense to an artistic practice that is known as art for social change, where the artist works with communities in order to identify and propose solutions for possible problems that the community is facing. And since 2018, I also started working closely with Bilal, and we were joined by our common interest in production as an agency of empowering people and in the impact the power of art to bring positive change in the world. In 2020, we were invited by Gate27 for a residency in Ayvalık, and there we started developing the Creative Craft platform, which is more or less the focus of our talk today, and you will learn more about it later on. Melissa? Can you hear us? Would you like to also introduce Gate27?
Yes. Thank you so much, Lydia. And I would like to start by saying I would love to physically be with you all. Unfortunately, I have the flu. So I would like to thank the Digilogue team to making this possible for me to attend this panel digitally. So let's start with Gate27. Gate27 is an international artist residency program. We aim to facilitate research and production processes of different practices, and we try to provide a platform for interdisciplinary interaction. I'm not sure if you can see me properly because I cannot see the view right now, but I'm trying to go a little bit backward. I hope it works.
We can.
So you can? Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. So when we think about Gate27, we can think about it as a platform that organizes programs and events that develop communication among both local and international residents. We focus on the diversity of the hosts of the people we host. So we try to host people of different disciplines, but also cultures and different stages of their careers. So the idea of creating such a space was seeded in me as I was growing up with a family that supported my curiosity and normalized critical thinking. But also my experience in New York, where I had the chance to get introduced to a diversity of formulas in terms of residencies, enabled me to create this specific program. So maybe Lydia, if you can move to the second slide where we have a little bit of numbers in there. So we first opened Gate 27 on the 1st of November in 2019. It was right before the pandemic, that stroke. And since then, we've hosted more than 50 residents, so more than 50 different projects among different backgrounds and cultures, and as I previously said, stages of career. And diversity was very important to me as I learned to understand the importance of bringing different disciplines together, where I would love to dive deep further. So one thing that I had a lot of difficulty when I realized Gate 27 is, how do you memorize the impact of human connection? How do you memorize empathy, travel, and the understanding of brainstorming, ideation? So instead of explaining those impacts with numbers, I thought it would make more sense to share a little video of Gate 27 with you.
We can't hear the sound of the video.
Should we stop?
Well, if we can't hear the sound, I can jump in and tell the stories, if that makes sense. Chris Sollers was a multidisciplinary artist. When he came to Istanbul, he was shocked by cigarettes and the stray cats. So he decided to make a band and create a song called Kitty Paws, and he made outfits from cigarettes. Seher Uysal, which you just saw a little bit before, is an artist that works on recent history, what is true and what is not true and what is gossip. Gülçin Aksoy actually was at Gate 27, and she was inspired by the trash that was piling up by the shore. So she created a photographic series where she decided that if trash exists, I exist. If I exist, trash exists, and so I am trash. And she photographed herself with piles of trash. And I am not really able to see who's there right now, but I'm thinking it's Trong.
Yeah.
Trong came to Gate 27 with the idea of understanding the economic development of Istanbul through tiles. But what struck him was much more interesting for him. He was really interested in the cultural trauma. So that took a change in his research process, which is what we're actually really enjoying at Gate 27. We were a research process focused residency, so we really, really enjoy that part. Well, there is Bilal, as you can see, and Bilal and Lydia will tell further about their experience, so I won't jump into that further. And then Mayeri, during her performance research of lullabies in the region. So, well, as you can see, there's a variety of knowledge generation, a variety of research, and a variety of know-how, but also experiences. As we host residents, we get to not only allow our residents to experiment, but also search for knowledge and networks and stay as a member of our residencies afterwards. We believe in pilot projects, and I think that's where Lydia and Bilal come in my story, because Gate 27 started as a pilot, but the new project of Gate 27 started throughout the pilots as well.
And it is amazing, I think, this fact that you pointed out to, that there is a lot of variety in the artists that come to Istanbul or Baliksh here through Gate 27 is amazing. because you can see their own experience from Turkey, but also how Turkey is involved in their work, this kind of dialogue between their practice and the influences that they get from here. Which, to connect it a little bit to our topic today, during the pandemic, a lot of residencies were wondering if they can turn their program into digital residencies. In a sense, that may work when there is no other solution. But I think that this actual physical presence in a place is something that you cannot complement or compare. Maybe it is something different, equally important, but not really the same thing. Moving on to Bilal. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Where's my slide?
Can we see the slides on the main screen, please?
By the way, I am Bilal Yılmaz, an interdisciplinary artist based in Istanbul. I mainly use light, sound, movement, and interaction to create sculptural objects, installations, and experiences to change the spectator's perception and to bring joy of collectivity. Beside of my interdisciplinary productions, I also work on social and collective projects, and we are going to talk about one of these projects that we are developing together with Lydia, this creative craft platform. But my background, research, and the practice is very much related with my interdisciplinary education. So I would like to talk about my background a bit. So my bachelor degree is from Boğaziçi University, Information System Engineering. Then I studied in New York Binghamton University, Computer Science. It was a part of my bachelor degree study. Then I made an MA at Istanbul Technical University in Product Design Department. While I was studying at Boğaziçi University, but especially in New York, Binghamton University, I took really great sculpture and the design courses. And I started to spend most of my time, let's say between 30 to 40 hours of a week in the collective fine arts studio of the university. It was a professional studio for many students to practice their art and the design studies. And then I realized, while I was at the same time studying and the programming and the coding, that I don't want to spend my life in front of a computer. I don't want to be a programmer. I want to devote myself to these handcrafting techniques, constantly learning and experiencing. I mean, I realized my ambition in a very early age to that direction. Then I decided to devote myself to that direction. And when I come back to Istanbul, then I started a product design on MA. Next, please. When I came back from New York, I had a dream because I was working in a collective studio, constantly practicing with different materials and handcrafting techniques to be able to create the narratives and the forms in my mind. And I was enjoying a lot, and I want to continue my life in that way, but how? And I had a question in my mind that I was a computer scientist who decided to devote the life to that direction, making things by hands in creative meaning, but there are many people who study in these creative departments, like the architects, the fine arts departments, the product design departments. What do they do after they graduate? Where do they meet with the material and the different techniques? Or when they want to devote themselves to that direction, how do they manage it? And I couldn't find a solution. I mean, there wasn't a collective studio, a space where we can continue to learn and practice after university, because the university is such a limited period that can only give you some ideas about the things that you might like, but then you need a safe space and environment to be able to devote yourself to that direction, the things that you discover in your education period. And as I was involved in a very productive collective working space in States and a small-scale versions of it in club life of the Boğaziçi University, I decided to open a collective studio. Then made a bunch of the research about the real estate prices, how can it be feasible in Istanbul, and also start to make a few researches by talking with established artists and the designers if they had such a wish before, or if someone tried it before, to be able to have some experience. And then I realized nobody couldn't. A lot of the creative people wished that, but nobody couldn't succeed it. When I realized that it isn't feasible or possible through my financial situation, I did what many creative people do when they cannot do something. I wrote a manifesto about the need of having a studio. And of course, it was a utopic manifesto, and I said that every neighborhood should have a collective studio, a place where we can practice constantly, where we can pass the know-how from generation to generation, and constantly learning around the materials, where we can question the consumption through production. And we have to keep the studios in our production at the studios in our city urban life. Then at that period, the dean and the director of the Boğaziçi University, they were looking for some projects that questioned the self-sufficient university model. Until 1982, many universities in Turkey, they were quite self-sufficient. For Boğaziçi University case, there were the craft studios inside the campus. At least 8 wood masters, 6 iron masters, shoemakers, everything we had inside the campus, and it was answering the needs of the campus. And these studios were also the places where students and the masters were practicing together around their studies. So the first image is from Boğaziçi University's archive. It's from the metal studio, where students and the craftsmen are working together on different scale of the projects. But in time, because of the central management system of the education in universities, because of these places, when the masters retired, the central office stopped to send the new masters. They continued to send officers constantly. So we lost to the craft labor at the universities, and in time these studios become useless. There weren't enough masters to handle the work, and in time we lost this culture. So my research was about how can we bring this self-sufficient production model. And when this open studio, collective studio, let's say, manifesto meets with director and the dean of that period, Fikret Adaman and Kadri Özçaldar, the good times of Boğaziçi University, they really liked the idea, and they gave me a space to create a pilot project about this idea. And then I started to establish the collective studio at Boğaziçi University next to the Fine Arts Club. I visited all of the storage and the dirty rooms of the university and collected all these unused materials and the leftover from the different studios of the periods and studios of the university, fixed them, invited my friends to fix them and to give lectures. Then we created the studio. Then the next 5 years, I continuously gave lectures at this studio for free, of course, because it was such an informal space. And we created a nice tradition. Next. Okay, I will keep it short. Then the Crafted in Istanbul project. And at the same period, I started my MA at Product Design Department at Istanbul Technical University. And I live in Istanbul since 2004. In between 2 years, I was in New York, but I spent most of my time in this historical peninsula side of the Istanbul, Eminönü. And in one of the lectures, while I was taking my masterclass lectures in Mapping Design in Istanbul lecture, this lecture enabled me to discover some of the craft studios in Eminönü. These were the streets that I was often passing, but I never realized existence of these craft studios. They were so hidden. And I was so much into learning new techniques, learning new materials, and practicing constantly around them, but they were so much hidden. Then through my background of information system engineering, I came up with the idea to let's visualize these craft studios. It was such a naive idea. I first applied and go to the different councils to be able to get this database and just to visualize it. The idea was very simple at the beginning, but I realized none of the institutions doesn't keep records of these craft studios. So we didn't have any data. Still, we don't have really meaningful data about it. Then I decided to make the research by myself and start to visit the craft studios one by one and collect around 100 craft studios data. Then convinced 2 of my friends and we realized CraftNet in Istanbul. CraftNet in Istanbul became the first digital craft map of the Istanbul. We were using a mapping interface for this project. And it has also the filters. The filters enable you to choose the crafts through the materials first, then it shows you the crafts that are working with those materials and their location on the map. And when you click on the dots, it gives more information about the craftsman, their name, address, the pictures from the craftsman's studio. It was such a pilot project, and we were not sure that if we were thinking too romantic, is there still interest to the crafts? At the beginning, people were not believing me that they were trying to convince me that I am too romantic, and I was trying to convince them that no, there is a potential about the crafts. Then we decided to publish a manifesto first, and through the response of the people decide and our roadmap, and the number was the 50. If at the end of the first week, more than 50 people leave their email, we said that we are going to continue. And after the first week, there were 850 people left their email from all different areas. The doctors, engineers, the creatives, architects, they all wanted to know the cross culture of the city. Then we published CraftNet in Istanbul. Since we published CraftNet in Istanbul, it supported more than 15 academic researches in international level, and exhibited in 2 different biennials. And later, all this craft knowledge and this craft research became one of my main artistic practice. It started to reflect on my production, and I started to use these craft studios in my creative productions, then start to discover contemporary potential of the craft studios for the creative production of artists, designers, or the creatives in general.
We will see some examples later. Now let's pass to our first, chapter, which is definitions and frameworks. So you know that in the artwork we really like to reflect on things, question the established way of thinking and doing things, and look things from different perspectives. So this is kind of the definitions that we made for our project and the framework that create the framework within which we operate. The first big question, maybe it doesn't sound like it, but it is because craft has a lot of different definitions, and a lot of people think they know what craft is and isn't. But in the art history also and in the creative history, this has been a huge debate. So Bilal, what is craft?
So, when you Google the craft, the first definition will appear in front of you: an activity involving skill in making things by hand. But An archaeologist also that we recently met through this research in Skopje, it was clearly highlighting the value of the spirituality. It is a harmony of the technique and the spirituality, a flow of the mind and the thinking. It is a form of thinking process while making by hand. So a flow of making that passes from mind to hand, then hand to the material, then to the object or the product. But in a world that prioritized the progress, nothing that doesn't involve the creativity anymore, nothing that doesn't update itself through the creative interventions will not going to have a chance to survive. So, does craft deserve to survive? Is there still potential? Should we still keep the craft in our society or let it to die?
So I will. So can we get the image back? No, behind. Can we get the image in the big screen? Okay.
Is it
Destroyed my whole.
Get ready for the field of real. S1. No pain, no gain.
increase the quality?
I'm sorry the quality isn't very good, but it's a clip
Can
from
you
YouTube.
increase the quality?
The size.
Eat it, guys.
We are not gonna watch the all, but many of you maybe know this movie, Ready Player One.
Hello, Wade.
Hello, Miss Gilmore.
There is one person that still cares about where they live. This woman who's playing with her.
What's the matter? Like getting you down?
I was born in 2027. After the corn syrup droughts, after the bandwidth riots, after people stopped trying to fix problems and just tried to outlive them.
Can we? Sorry, guys.
Just stop it. I think we...
My parents,
I just need to stop the video. Well, this was a glimpse of what maybe our life will look like if we just start connecting ourselves only to the digital world and forgetting about the physical world. Of course, I don't know, maybe it is a little bit cheesy. It is a movie from 2018, Ready Player One, that is based actually on a novel published in 2011 and supposedly starts with this fictional future in 2045, where after some ecological distraction, everybody is connecting to this oasis, virtual environment, metaverse, you may call it now, and they completely, all their lives are there and not in the real world. The poster of the movie reads, "A better reality awaits." So my question is mostly about the scenography of this thing. Is this what our life will look like if we stop caring about crafts and about making and fixing our environment? Maybe you say that if crafts disappear, there will be new ways of making in the future, new ways of producing and fixing. Or that if we shift our interest to digital environments, then our physical surroundings don't matter at the end of the day. But if you think about it, this doesn't take into account an important fact that even when we are in the virtual environment, what we're using to enter the virtual environment is objects. is things that have been designed and have been manufactured either by crafts or by industry. And this is our real surrounding at the end of the day. When we take off the mask or we, I don't know, close the computer screen, then we are in relation to a physical environment, to a physical world. Of course, let's not forget that this is also not the only transformation that, or turning point that crafts are up against. In the turn of the 19th century, early 20th century, again, industrialization kick-started a huge discussion around crafts. In aesthetic and artistic movements like the arts and craft movement in the UK, or Bauhaus in Germany, or constructivism in Russia, where people were questioning the superiority or inferiority of crafts in relation to mass-produced products. This was done in intellectual circles, but it was also done in for commercial purposes. The Deutscher Werkbund is an association that was established in Germany in 1907 in order to discuss how German products can be more competitive in relation to the British ones or the American ones. And the way to do that was through crafts. They started discussing about the relationship of craftsmanship and mass production, about the relationship between usefulness and beauty, or even about the practical purpose of beauty in an everyday object. In any case, beyond all these aesthetic explorations, and besides the production of typically traditional products, I think that for a lot of us, when we think about crafts, the first image that comes to mind is a craftsman working in a studio that is dark and small and basically produces some kind of traditional form or product. But crafts have really been assimilated into industry, and we tend to forget that. Either by providing skilled workers for industry or by producing smaller parts that, that are not possible to produce in big facilities, in big factories. And because of this versatility that crafts have, they have also, they can respond to different needs, and they can lead to social, cultural, and environmental sustainability. Especially in the post-industrial era. The post-industrial actually is a term that was introduced in the early 20th century, again to discuss this relationship of crafts and industry. Right now, the post-industrial is characterized by technological innovations, advanced technologies used in the production of objects. Also, at the same time, post-industrial refers to the production of goods with symbolic value and to a symbiotic relationship between humans and the environment, connected to notions like commons, post-growth, and multiple identities, the post-human. So I just referred to the concept of sustainability after bombarding you with this little back and forth about crafts and technology and industry. Sustainability is a very challenging term because it is used a lot. It can mean a lot of things at the same time. Maybe it's good to focus it again on the art world. And Melissa is going to talk a little bit about sustainability for arts institutions and what they do specifically in Gate 27 in this sector.
That's awesome. And then I can finalize with talking a little bit about sustainability's, crafts' role in sustainability, possibly. So when we think about sustainability in relation to arts and arts institutions, we can think of it in two aspects, in my opinion. One is the content of arts, and then the other one is the emissions it creates. So the content is, it's quite easy to think about it. It's the way that it instigates change and it instigates feeling and pressures for change. So I don't think I have to converse or focus on that too long, but we can talk a little bit about the emissions the arts institutions and arts realizes. So when we look at that, I try to think of it in two terms. One is the built environment. So we can think about museums, galleries, other built institutions that have the responsibility to become green buildings. So they shouldn't only, it's not only about reducing harms, but it's also about being the examples and leading towards a cleaner future, towards a cleaner community. The other part are the ones that encompass a lot of travel. And travel is quite tricky. So when we think about travel, we can think about fairs, we can think about exhibitions, and we can think about residencies as well. The system in terms of fairs is a little bit nonsensory to me due to the legal aspect of things. So when you go to a fair, let's say you go to a fair, a Turkish person goes to a fair in New York and they want to buy something from a gallery from another country. When you buy that piece travels back to that country. It has already traveled from another country. It travels back to that country to be sent to your country. So that creates an extra source of emission due to travel. But then there are residencies. Then there are when we think about travel, we think about empathy, community, learning, growing. So what's important is that when we think about the travel part, we cannot think of a yes or a no. We have to think of it in a term of sustainability with a purpose. So traveling for a meaning, not like a wind up music box that you go from one fair to another, like trying to race for something, but having a sense of purpose for going where, for what, and actually creating a meaningful mindset when you are traveling. Regarding Gate 27, what we do in terms of sustainability and why we decided to realize the crafts project is quite similar. So Gate 27 looks at sustainability in a multi-layered way. First, as I spoke about the built environment, we are trying to become a sustainable building. We have a little manifesto you can check on our website that explains it much better than the flu version of Melissa will explain it. But what we do is we try to take our rainwater, we capture our rainwater, we have a permaculture garden, we compost, we use as little toxic materials as possible. So we try to have clean detergents, clean soaps, glass water bottles. But we also try to teach our hosts or try to get our hosts to take these habits that we try to put into our residency as well, such as composting your waste, learning how to permaculture, or just segmenting your trash. Then we host programs and projects that are in alignment with Gate 27 values only. And while we host those projects, the Gate 27 values encompass sustainability values. So it has to be in alignment with sustainability values. But while we host these projects and while we are trying to enable these programs, we have to grow our network and community. So that is a second layer where we work as Gate 27. We try to bring a diverse group of people to support the projects that are hosted at Gate 27. To realize that, we also crafted an exploratory conversation series. What we did there was we collaborated with IPC, Istanbul Policy Center, with İKSV to bring field workers and researchers together that are focusing on sustainability to discuss themes of sustainability, such as growth, degrowth, agriculture, and action points. Then, the part that I would like to integrate the sustainability part with crafts is when we started to work with sustainability, we realized that we had to somehow connect sustainability with economic development. Regarding economic development, the economic development we wanted to work had to be in alignment with our sustainability values. In terms of slow production, value-added production, low or less toxic materials usage, and mostly clean production, but also sustaining cultural heritages and sustaining cultural values, crafts really integrated into our sustainable mindset. So that's how Gate 27 and crafts became in alignment in terms of our approach in sustainability at Gate 27.
And together we developed a specific focus on creative craft collaboration. So throughout the year, one or two artists invited by Gate 27 to be resident artists are focusing on discovering, exploring, and creating a work as a result of their interaction with crafts in Istanbul. The first artist that was hosted was a few months ago, Maksha Balogh from Pakistan, who, as a result of her interaction with crafts, created this artwork that you see on the right part of the screen. It is called Root, and it was the result of her visual, let's say, connection to the Istanbul landscape, and also her discovery of engraving in a traditional format that Thomas Susta, that you see on the photos, did. Back in 2020, when Bilal and I visited Ayvalık as residents of Gate 27, it was the start of a wonderful friendship with Melissa and Gate. And we actually set off to do we were the first residency artists in Ayvalık, and we said, okay, let's do a map of crafts in the area in order to also introduce the residency program to the city and also leave this as a heritage for the residency artists that were gonna go after us. When we started the research in the first meetings with people from arts and culture in the city, they said, but we have no crafts in Ayvalık. You will not find one. You can try, but let's see what you manage. In 10 days, we found 36 craftsmen, and actually there were more that there wasn't enough time to map. So crafts is something that is very often hidden in the city, but we have a way of discovering.
I mean, we also, while making this craft research, we don't only map the craft culture of the city, we also learn a lot about the cultural background of the city. And we create some questions about the future of our cities. Because, for example, the Ayvalık. Since 1976, it's an architecturally protected city. You cannot, and the texture of the city is so beautiful. The Greek population who were living there created it. And it is one of the main attraction point by the many people who live in Istanbul. They buy summer houses in Ayvalık and they constantly go there. It is the closest summer destination maybe. Since 1976, the texture of the city has to be protected. You cannot change the stone, wooden, and the iron facade, the construction of the buildings. But who is doing this job? Until we go to the Ayvalık, even the municipality culture department, they had no idea how many studios still exist in the city. They were saying 2, maybe 3. Then we mapped 36 craft studios, and the result, there are 3 woodworking studio, the last 3 metalworking studio, and the last 2 stone master in the city. And none of them doesn't has apprentice. There isn't a second generation coming. And the vocational school, who's supposed to educate the next generation craftspeople, the model failed. There are no more students, there are no more interest to the crafts in society in these schools. So there isn't a next generation coming who can fix the texture of the city. So we create a meeting, we arrange a meeting with the mayor of the city, and we very simply ask this question: what's your future plan? 10 years later, when you lose all these craft studios, how do you plan to protect your city to be plasticized? All the stones will be changed with the beton, and the wooden constructions, the frames will be changed with the plastic, and all the metal, the beautiful hundreds years of the frames will be changed with the aluminum, industrially made the frames. So, together with the crafts, we are going to lose our cities, the texture of our cities. We are going to lose our culture. We are going to lose our identity. And it is really nice to try to understand the city, how it evolved and changed, and read this history of the city through the evolution or devolution of the crafts in the city. Because the product, they are there to answer the needs of the city. And when the needs of the city change, the crafts also are changing. And they are carrying a huge information for a lot of creative people, not in production-wise, also narrative-wise. Because the creative people, we don't need only the production techniques, possibilities to produce our limited creative ideas. We also need the narratives, and they carry a huge source of narratives. Narration.
So let's watch an example of this, a short video from the first residency artist at Gate 27 focusing on craft. And afterwards we will see a few examples from your works.
Mm-hmm. And all the main idea behind of this mapping and this even residency program is
I'm Maze Paluch,
to reveal
and
the potential
I'm from
of crafts. Sorry.
Nasıl?
I'm Maze Paluch, and I'm from Pakistan. I'm an artist in residence at Gate 27. I am here for the Creative Craft project, which is curated by Bilal and Lydia. I am working in collaboration with the craftsmen of Istanbul, and I'm also archiving the material, mapping my visits to the craft studios. As I come from Pakistan, I have a different impression of the craft studios here. I'm observing their techniques, their materials, the use of their materials, and I'm also trying to see ways of integrating and incorporating it into my works. I'm looking at how they deal with the materials. So I believe with the craft studios, it's more of handling the material, and that is very fascinating. I also work with textiles, I work with carpets, rugs.
Ben Bilal Yılmaz, İstanbul'da yaşayan disiplinler arası.
Is the sound a bit bad, or is it only me that is having problems?
How does it sound for you? Because
It was good. No. But I think it's a good introduction. Let's, because you will hear again us talking, and
so we don't need to introduce
don't need.
ourselves again.
So this was more or less the framework. Let's also discuss a little bit now about what is the reaction, our reactions to that framework, because there is a lot of ways of doing things. And I mean, when Bilal is talking, he's talking on the one hand on how, in general, policies should support craft. But also what we do is to try to discover another way of maybe making crafts more contemporary through collaborations with creatives, contemporary creatives. Because in a I lost my train of thought. That's okay.
Next.
So yeah, we saw that there was always a maybe wrong, a misconception that craft and industry are not compatible. Another misconception is that craft is only connected to the production of traditional goods and not to contemporary aesthetics at all. By the way, in Greek, the word art, techni, is also the same root for techniki, technique, and technologia, technology. So all these things, until I think the early 20th century, were very much connected. And we have a saying that, okay, you should learn a techni, like a technique, a technique, and then leave it. This is what will help you survive in the future. Even if you become a scientist, learning to do something by hand is always something useful for your future. And Bilal, your practice has also been informed a lot about, as you said, not only producing things with craftsmen, but also being inspired by crafts in order to develop the concepts behind your works. So maybe start with giving us a few examples.
All these products that you are going to see, the contemporary design pieces and the art pieces, were produced together with the craftsmen in different craft studios. I mean, at the beginning, when I discovered the existence of this underground craft culture, these craft studios in the city, and when I started to visit these studios one by one, there was a huge potential. They were dealing with a lot of different materials, with a lot of different techniques, and it was just bringing constantly new ideas to me, to experiencing this, to be in those studios. And I was asking myself why people don't use these craft studios, why designers don't use, why artists, why we can't see these creative actors in these studios. And the answer was clear. The system wrote in our mind that this is one of the misconceptions about the crafts. We only think that they can capable of doing traditional products. They are using traditional handcrafting techniques, but the technique doesn't necessarily need to reflect on the product in the same way. The tradition belongs to the previous generation's aesthetic and to the functional needs. And every generation generates their own aesthetic and functional needs. So we have to update the production, the outputs of these productions. But we don't need to get rid of these production techniques to be able to update the outputs of this production. So, first in 2014, the project was selected for the second Istanbul Design Biennale. It gave us a chance to share our manifesto with the society. And we proposed, and we were commissioned to make 2 utopic productions for the Design Biennale, and we produced the fakir and the boynuz. Fakir is a modern form of this Indian nail bed, but actually there are around 563 sticks, these wooden forms, and there are springs under. So when you lie on it, it takes the form of your body. And the boynuz is a combination of a street bench and a street lamp. So these 2 products, they are experimental products, but what we wanted to show to people in the exhibition, when they come and when they see an exhibition about the craft map, craft culture of the city, we wanted to show them these contemporary experimental productions were made in craft studios. They don't necessarily need to do a traditional work. In 2016, I was invited by a curator to express myself with an installation, express my research with an installation. And I was thinking how to do it, then the idea of creating a shadow box, a shadow machine came in my mind. Then, should we play? Let's play this. Then I created the Dirty Box. And Dirty Box is a shadow machine, and it was exhibited on 15th Istanbul Biennale. And together with this Biennale, after getting a title of the designer through the second design Biennale, I get a title of the artist through to the 15th Istanbul Biennale. And we found chance to point attention of to the society again the potential of these crafts through this exhibition also. So it's produced together with the craft studios, with 4 different craft studios involved in the production of this idea. What does the machine basically do is, when you go into the room is dark. There's only one light lightening to the machine. And it says somewhere that at the door, if the machine is not working, press the red button. When you press the red button, the lights of the room turns off, then the robot eye wakes up and started to project the map of the Istanbul, the old peninsula, the streets that I was constantly searching to the craft studios. And then the robot eye goes between streets to streets, like how I was going between streets to streets, and following to the dust and to the smell of the craft to be able to find these studios. Then it pointed out one of these studios who involved in the production and sent a signal to the other machine on the right side, and that machine started to project, show the pictures that were taken from that craft studio while we were producing it. So it is actually a machine that tried to tell its own production story, how it is produced. So together with this production, I start to find chance to realize my installation ideas, contemporary art ideas, and I was still using the crafts, and it was a perfect source and the area for me to express myself and to show the potential of the crafts in a different scale.
Can we get the image back on the big screen?
Then I continue my contemporary productions. The one on the right side is a lightning design. It was exhibited in Germany's Sustainable Design Festival in Köln, Modern Applied Museum. Then the one on the left bottom side is Memories of the Home. It was exhibited in Šiviserija Center, Culture Center in Slovenia. And as an output of my research about the collective culture of that building. And again, the light installation at the top, the fireflies, it was exhibited in Istanbul as one of the output of a research about the plural, multicultural identity of the Istanbul. And the one on the right side is the serial craft. It was the biggest kinetic installation made in Istanbul, in total 300 square meter. It was a wall installation, and the whole mechanism was turning and triggered only from 2 points. It was inspired again, the idea is inspired from the craft studios. Until 1930s, 1950s, these craft studios were answering the needs of the whole country. We didn't industrialize in the same period as Europe. We industrialized later, but to be able to answer the needs of this population, the craft studios updated themselves very fastly, and they create a semi-mass production style in Turkey. And at that period also, there wasn't electric machines that much, so the studios had limited capacity, and the engines were too expensive, so they were using these pulleys and the belt system to be able to run more than one machine with only one engine. So in old craft studios, if you are lucky to find one of these old craft studios, you will see in the ceiling of the studio many pulleys and the systems that enable the power to pass from machine to machine. So, and the other one, Shadows of Craft Skopje, it is a format of the exhibition as an artistic output of our research that we realize every city. And yeah. So this is the evolution of the project a bit, how it started in 2011 with an idea of a collective studio, then craftsmanship in Istanbul research in 2012 started, and Crafted in Istanbul project, the website is published. 2014 to 2015, between 2014 and 2015, I was also co-founder of a design collective. We were designing conceptual interior spaces, mostly on Istiklal Street. We designed more than 10 conceptual spaces and the point was we were constantly working with these local craft studios to be able to realize our ideas, and these were the perfect case studies for me to be able to understand if there is still potential of these craft studios. I mean, if I didn't have visited, if I didn't have this know-how, this experience and knowledge of craft studios, if we didn't have these craft studios in the city, it was impossible for me to realize all these ideas. It wasn't possible even for me to dream these ideas, because the techniques that I learned, the narratives that comes from these studios enable me to dream these ideas and then realize them. And in time, it wasn't only an artistic research, it was also an academic research for me, and it enabled me to create different collaborations and make the research, especially the issue of the craft, visible in different institutions and to the level of the society. So I involved in a lot of the talks, lectures, collaborations with different universities, and as I said at the beginning, it became subject for more than 15 academic researches, this study and experiences.
And now tomorrow you will also add the Digilogue. So we saw in Bilal's work that craft is not necessarily at odds or competitive to fine arts. It is, and it is not also competitive to industry. So in general, it's a practice that has borders that are very flexible, and it can include fine and applied art, function and non-function, labor and leisure, analog and digital, past and future. Because of this versatile position and this going in and out of different fields, crafts are also a very good entry point for artistic research and reflection, not only, as Bilal said, in terms of production, but also in terms of conceptualizing ideas. It carries a lot of meaning, a lot of perspectives for issues such as contemporaneity, production and consumption, urban transformation, social dynamics, colonialism, history, tradition, and even performativity and temporality. This is one of our favorite, let's say, definitions about crafts, because it really pinpoints this fluidity that crafts have and their contemporary quality, since they carry a lot of different influences and also a lot of elements from the past, the present, and the future. I don't know if Melissa is still here. We can't see her.
I'm here.
You're here. So in this fluidity that can also be a way of doing things, Melissa will talk a little bit about how to approach an issue from different disciplines at the same time, across uniting different disciplines. So, Melissa, could you expand on this notion of intra, cross, multi, inter, and transdisciplinary?
Of course, of course. So thank you again, Lydia. So I want to start with saying that I don't believe in a right way of doing things. It's about you have those different sets of doing things and you choose which one actually works for that specific case. So I love this photo because it's the cutest way of explaining what intra, cross, multi, inter, and transdisciplinary means. And I'll go swiftly over it for you, and then I'll explain how Gate 27 works in multidisciplinary and with the Creative Craft program, interdisciplinary programming. So intra, you see there's a little carrot. It's just one single academic field, focusing on that certain academic field. And then when you think about the cross one, you can think of it as viewing a discipline from the perspective or from the lens of another another field, in fact. Then there are the multidisciplinary mindsets or processes. So you can think of that as there are several disciplines that provide different perspectives. So that salad is a perfect way of explaining it, where you can have a tomato, a lettuce. Each one is set and undistinguished. They're distinguishable. They're themselves. You can see the tomato is a tomato. It's not a tomato soup or it's not a sauce, but it adds value to the plate. So at Gate 27, in terms of multidisciplinary projects, we had this exploratory conversations I introduced earlier. We had people from different disciplines, everyone focusing on sustainability and adding value to the conversation of sustainability. Then there is the interdisciplinary field, which is what we've done with Bilal and Lydia regarding the creative crafts collaboration. So this is like you're actually drawing on different disciplines' knowledge and bringing a collaborative environment, just like that little stool that you see there. I love these little photos. So the creative crafts collaboration was a collaborative program where we allowed both the crafts person and the creative person to collaborate rather than integrating a dictative method. Nobody told the other what to do, so there was no telling, but they were doing together. So they had to actually respect each other's know-hows and learnings. And it's really interesting to watch an elderly craft person and a young artist both instigating that sort of a collaboration. The transdisciplinary aspect of doing research is actually it's boundaryless, but it also encompasses includes all other stakeholders into the research. So you have to be able to make it a little bit more inclusive, a little bit more public, and that's why I feel like CraftNet, what Bilal and Lydia is doing with CraftNet, is really, really interesting in that sense. So why are we looking at these different ways of doing things? I mean, we all, I guess, understand at this point the importance of collaboration and importance of focus, but I think what's really mandatory to understand here is that there are different research and different ways of doing things for different results. And we all have to be able to come together and be able to share different disciplines at some stage of our careers to be able to create real positive change. So with this sort of collaboration, let's think about the multi and the trans and a little bit the interdisciplinary mindset. What happens is that there will always be a diverse set of perspectives set into the ground. And that is a room for growth. And it develops critical thinking skills, it heightens communication skills. It can help you grow in sectors, areas, segments that you did not even expect to grow and develop and even possibly generate new knowledge. So yeah, like you can get new information, you go towards innovation, etc. So at K27, we try to enhance the diversity in our programs, but also we try to create that diversity with our community that we work together within different disciplines.
Thank you, Melissa. And I don't know if you could see, but while you were talking, I also shared my favorite Gilles Deleuze quote that says that theory does what practice cannot do, and practice thinks what theory cannot think.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful.
So now to the last part, we have 15 more minutes, I think, Bilal.
How much time we have? Done.
We started 15 minutes later, so I kind of, could you maybe quickly describe a little bit CraftNet and then have like a few minutes, maybe someone wants to pose a question.
Okay.
I will give you 7 minutes. Can I give him 7 minutes? Thank you.
Okay, the Creative Craft platform is a new platform that we try to establish through participatory action research. The whole idea is to revealing the potential of the crafts. If we don't have any data about something, you cannot prove that there is a potential about it. As none of the institution doesn't hold the records of this craft studio, we invite all the creatives to join our research in a participatory way. Let's map this craft culture together, let's discover it together, and let's show to the authorities that there is still a potential about these crafts. And let's force them to take an action to create meaningful craft policies for the post-industrial society, the period that we are involving in. So for the crafts, I mean, this is really going to slow down me, but we have to define it through some criteria. And what are our criteria? Because today we are talking also digital crafts, electronic crafts. Yes, we will slowly going to jump to those points, and we want to map and to make meaningful relations of those crafts, but those crafts are not in danger. What we focus first is the endangered crafts that we still need in our society to be able to continue updating and building our civilization. So crafts, how we perceive it, is the production, slow in time, small in place, the know-how that passed from master to apprentice, the traditional techniques with the natural materials, and the professional, the people who are doing it as a professional activity. So the crafts that we still keep in our villages as a past of the tradition is not something that we still prioritize. And what's the potential of the craftsman so far? I mean, when we started to map it and show it on the map of the city, we started to realize the clustered craft system. What is the clustered craft system? The clustered craft system means that there are crafts that are related with each other, existing in the same neighborhood or in the same han. And what is the benefit of this? The benefit is when you go into a cluster system with an idea, it gives you a chance to come out with a product directly. For example, I need a furniture, so I need to buy the wood someplace. Then a master has to make a latte master has to round it. Then another master has to prepare the skeleton of that table. Then the varnisher has to involve in. then the upholstery master has to involve. If they are all in the same neighborhood, this clustered model also works as a form of education, because nobody doesn't educate you for these informations. Even in product design departments, they are educating the new generation for industrial products. So we are learning how to design in industrial production system. We don't learn the specifications of the material and how to deal with these materials in different craft studios. Just two more things. Is also flexible, very rich, and alternative production model that enable limited number of production ideas to be realized. Otherwise, I mean, you don't have many chances actually when you are a creative person and if you want to produce your idea. You can go to the industrial model, which is very expensive, and you have to produce thousands of that idea to be able to make it feasible. The second option is to produce that idea in your own studio through your own materials, and the techniques, and how many of us can capable of having that much techniques or buying that much machines. And the third, the model, the most feasible model that we suggest is let's use these small scale manufacturing craft studios. Let's collaborate with them to produce our creative ideas, because that is the most feasible way for us. So the situation is the same. So far we realized this research in 4 different countries, 5 different cities. 95% of these studios don't have apprentices, and 60% of these craft masters are over 50 years old. If we don't do something, we will lose it. And craftsmen are not going to be the loser of this situation. We, as the creative generation, we will be the loser of this. But, okay, there's another idea that why we don't document this craft idea. No, this craft knowledge is known as in academia Dijital knowledge, a form of knowledge that you can pass, you can learn by practicing and watching. So it isn't a form of knowledge that we can put in our books or PDF pages and we can open it and learn it whenever we need. No, to be able to keep this craft knowledge, know-how, we have to keep the practice in our cities. So it is a multi-layered problem, and a multi-layered problem, not if you try to fix a part of a multi-layered problem, it doesn't necessarily solve the whole problem. It needs a different approach. So no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. We didn't create this problem, and we cannot approach it in the same way of the mentality that created it. It is based on an action research methodology. So at the beginning, the idea was so simple. I defined the problem that craftsmen are not visible. That is the problem, that we are not using it. And when I make it visible through a digital map, the research gets deeper, and I realized, there are more problems. There is gentrification behind of it. There is a city urban planning problems. There is industrialization problems. So through the definition of the problem, the proposal for the solution has changed, and this infinite circle started. And now we are in our last phase. Of course, we will continue to develop more solutions, but the current solution for us, the most contemporary solution based on our 10 years of research about crafts and many creative production, is to create a platform that brings together creatives and the craftsmen. And the first mission of this platform, is creating first a digital platform. A digital platform that gives chance, enable any creative person to map their own craft culture. When you see a craft studio in your neighborhood, it will give you a chance. It is a digital tool, because I realize that we are using all the time many different applications, but none of these applications weren't written for field research studies. It is only for us to consume more and more, and this application is a form of digital That's serving the first idea of the technology and digital to serve the humanity. So it is a tool for any creative person to be able to map the craft culture that they experience or that they find. Then a website visualizes this data. The research app enables you to find the craft master and enable us to see which streets are searched by which creative person. And a magazine specified for the craft makes constantly research in the academic archive and in different media sources and highlight all the creative projects made between creative peoples and the craftsmen. And the second phase that we wanted to realize is the project that I started at the beginning of my career in 2010 when I came back from New York. The first pilot study that we started at Boğaziçi University to create a much more bigger version of it in the city. I still have the same dream, and now it is connected with my research about the crafts, and we would like to create, after this digital platform CraftNet, we would like to create a craft hub. A hub where these traditional crafts and a maker lab, a fab lab, a digital technologies goes together with each other. A place where keep the production in the center, a place where we don't hide the production anymore under the ground in dirty basements places. A place where the creatives and these craft techniques merge to each other to create more experimental products. A place where give chance the people who would like to devote their life to different handcrafting techniques and to the materials and creative production to practice, learn, and interact around it. So we are in the phase of the developing CraftNet, and we hope that until the end of this year, we are going to publish it. There are a bunch of programmers working together with me, with us, and currently I am giving a lecture at the Architecture Department of Bilgi University about CraftNet also, and we are constantly going different talks and to the lectures to be able to spread this idea and the terms and the platform. Next month we will be in Kosovo, and people are inviting us because they find it very valuable and they realize the contemporary meaning of the crafts. And most of the context is building creative networks and communities around craft is the context that we talk around mostly.
Are there any questions? Because they're going to throw us away from the stage.
Yes.
There is one, I think there is a microphone somewhere. Yes.
Can you hear me? This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. I actually love that you're creating this network of craftspeople, because I do that on my Google Maps, just like labeling the craftspeople that I've worked with and I enjoyed working with. So I was trying to create it for myself, and how wonderful that there's going to be this wider thing. Is this going to be an app, or does this exist right now as a website, or?
It will be launched in early 2023.
Okay.
It is going to be like an application where you create a user profile. It's a bit like social media logic, but not social media. So you create a user profile, and then you can track your research, your field research. When you map a studio, you can actually fill in like the basic information, take a photo, record the sound, or take a short video, and this is uploaded on the online map. So it feeds itself in a way. Of course, there is some control of the data so that
so
people
there's
don't
gonna be
a verification. But it's actually a participatory collective map of crafts in every city that is part of the program.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, this was your research, so you know that's how you find these places. And also with like the DIY culture, I think increasing and literally with social media basically having a whole new platform. Whenever I go to these crafts people, actually they now have a lot more work to do because they're now producing for all these people who weren't actually creating stuff, who started creating it. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more usage cases for this. So thank you.
Thank you. And it is, you mentioned the DIY culture. It's actually really important because why we insist on making this a participatory thing is also because the local perception of craft from place to place changes. On the one hand, we cannot really understand how crafts are perceived in Turkey, yes, we can. In Greece, we can. But in North Macedonia, that we were, in Kosovo, that we were, there are different, the landscape is changing. So we cannot really create everything on our own. And also it is very important for the local creatives to actually go out and discover crafts themselves, because this way they will also start working with craftspeople. One more question over here.
Do you see the app becoming more digitized, where designers and artists end up creating something on the computer, renders, and then these objects get sent to the craftsman, and then they can either process it mechanically with like a machine or CNC machines and things like that, or are you trying to preserve the old culture of what craftsmanship is?
We are trying to protect these handcraft techniques in the society. I mean, we are not against the industry or digitalization. We are just claiming and manifesting that crafts should continue to exist in society, and we should use the technologies, the digital, to be able to keep this in our society. In percentage-wise, the need to the crafts will be in a different level, but we believe, and my practice clearly shows, there is still a huge potential for creative people's production. And this research by itself and the collaboration between the designer and or the creative person and the craftsman is a form of dialogue, we also say that, because in the society, even when we talk to the same language, actually we don't understand each other because we are growing with the different vocabularies. We are using different words to communicate. And there's a generation disappearing, the craft generation and the younger generation, and through the research methodology, we are also trying to activate a communication. And when people ask me, how could it be possible to, or how do I do very meaningful, successful collaborations through my creative production, the first thing that I suggest people is first build a dialogue with the craftsmaster. You have to be able to understand each other. He has to understand you, then you have to understand these circumstances, productions. Then that is the key for a successful collaboration and production through the crafts. So we never suggest people that, or promise people that one day they will be able to send their sketches or the AutoCAD files to the craftsman and they will do it. No, this is a co-production methodology that we are suggesting.
Thank you.
If there is no more question, perfect.
And we are out of time, sorry.
Sorry.
But actually it was 1.5 hours because we started 15 minutes late. So
Yes.
Thank you everyone. And thank you again, Digilogue, for having us.
Thank you for listening.